Hey everyone, and welcome. Let's talk about something we've all felt, that sharp sting of being left out or the deep ache of a breakup. It's universal, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder why it hurts so much? Like physically hurts? Well, today we're going to dive right into the science behind this very ancient, very human pain.
This isn't a new idea. Way back, over 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Aristotle was already onto it. He said, without friends, no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods. And he was spot on. Our need to connect with people, it's not just a nice to have, it's baked into our very existence.
So think about the words we use, right? We talk about a broken heart or feeling crushed. But are those just metaphors? Or is something else going on? Is our brain actually processing that emotional pain in the same way it would process, say, a broken arm? That's the big question we're digging into today.
Okay, so to really get why rejection hurts so much now, we've got to go back in time. And I mean way, way back. Because for our earliest ancestors, belonging to the group wasn't just about feeling good, it was literally a matter of life and death.
Think about it. For early humans, the tribe was everything. It meant you had help hunting, you had warmth from the fire, you had more eyes watching out for predators. Being alone meant you were exposed and vulnerable. So getting kicked out of the group, that was pretty much a death sentence.
And this is where it gets really fascinating when you compare then and now. Look, back then, if a hunt failed, that was a problem, sure. But being exiled from the tribe, that was the end. Our brains evolved to treat social rejection as the absolute biggest threat to our survival. And guess what? That ancient programming is still running the show in our 21st century brains.
So here's the key takeaway from all this. Evolution basically built this super powerful alarm system into our brains. And its one and only job was to make being socially excluded feel so incredibly painful that we would do literally anything to avoid it. It was all about staying connected to the group no matter what.
All right, so how does this ancient alarm system actually pop up in our modern brains? This is where neuroscientists got really curious. They wanted to see if they could actually see emotional pain on a brain scan and if it would look anything like physical pain.
And this leads us to a really cool idea called the pain overlap theory. Basically, from an evolutionary standpoint, the brain took a shortcut. Instead of inventing a whole new warning system for social danger, it just piggybacked on the system it already had for physical danger. It just borrowed the ouch signal. So to put this theory to the test, researchers came up with this really clever experiment. They found people who were going through the raw, intense pain of a recent, unwanted breakup. They put them inside an fMRI machine and then showed them a photo of their ex. Then, for comparison, they applied a hot, painful stimulus to their arm to see how the brain scans would stack up.
And the results were, wow, just stunning. The brain scans for the breakup pain and the physical pain, they were almost identical. But here's the real kicker. It wasn't just the emotional parts of the brain lighting up. The regions that process the sensory component of pain, the part that literally tells you, ouch, that hurts, they were firing up too.
In fact, the activity in those sensory areas was so specific that based on a huge analysis of hundreds of other studies, seeing that pattern meant there was an 88% chance the person was feeling actual physical pain. So the science is in. It's not a metaphor. Rejection literally, physically hurts.
Okay, but if this pain is hardwired into all of us, how come some people seem to bounce back from rejection so much easier than others? Why do some of us get totally shattered by it? Well, the answer starts to get a lot more personal, and it has to do with our own psychology.
A lot of it comes down to what we call our attachment style, which is basically a blueprint for relationships that gets created when we're very young. So if your caregivers were kind of inconsistent, rejection as an adult can feel absolutely catastrophic, like the end of the world. But if they were more distant, rejection might just confirm this deep-seated belief that getting close to people is a bad idea anyway. These old maps really do guide us.
And then, on top of that, our own minds can kind of play tricks on us. These are called cognitive distortions. Basically, they're like faulty thought patterns that just crank up the volume on the pain. Like catastrophizing, where one person saying no suddenly feels like I'm going to be alone forever. These aren't reality. They're just stories we tell ourselves that make the hurt so much worse.
So, we've got this prehistoric brain, right? How on earth does it handle the crazy, hypersocial, always-on world we live in now? Let's take a look at what happens when our ancient survival code crashes head-on with the internet.
Social media has created this world of what you could call quantified rejection. It's turned our social lives into a scoreboard.
Every single post is a test, and our social value is measured instantly by likes, shares, and follows. And our poor, ancient brains, they don't know the difference between getting ghosted online and getting kicked out of the tribe. This just puts us in the state of constant performance, of always being on watch. And what's really wild is that studies show being ignored online, just getting no response, is often more painful than getting negative comments. Think about that. At least with negative feedback, someone is paying attention to you. Being ignored feels like you don't even exist, and that's a direct hit to that deep, ancient fear of being cast out.
So, the verdict is in. The pain of rejection is real. It's deep and it's ancient. But, and this is a big but, the story doesn't have to end there. Because understanding why our brain is wired this way is the absolute first step toward rewriting our response to it.
We can absolutely build our resilience to this stuff. First, we can learn to challenge those distorted thoughts, to stop and ask, wait, is this feeling based on a fact, or is it just a fear I'm running with? Second, we can build a sense of self-worth that comes from the inside, not from how many likes we get. And finally, we can start to reframe rejection. It's not a final verdict on who you are, it's just a redirection, a sign to try a different path.
You know, when you think about it, the most successful people in any field are almost always the ones who have been rejected the most. They just didn't let it stop them. They saw it as a part of the process, not a brick wall. So I want to leave you with this question. Now that you know rejection is a totally normal, even necessary part of growing and succeeding, what are you going to dare to fail at next?